Now we're going to take a look at an article at universeinsideyou.com entitled The Voronezh UFO Incident, When Aliens Landed in the Soviet Union. And the anonymous writer begins. On the evening of September 27th, 1989, an event took place in the city of Voronezh, 300 miles southeast of Moscow, in what was then the Soviet Union, which would shock not only the citizens of that city, but people around the world. A curious pink light appeared in the sky above a crowded city park at about 6:30 p.m. in the evening. As park-goers craned their necks skyward to examine it, a deep red orb, approximately 10 meters in diameter, suddenly emerged from the light and began to circle the park. Without warning, a hatch opened on the lower part of the orb, and a humanoid figure appeared in the opening. The figure was extremely tall, some 3 meters or more by most accounts, yet had a very small head. It was dressed in silvery overalls and bronze boots, and on its tiny head were 3 eyes, the central of which rotated like a radar, appearing to look over the park. After a few moments, the hatch closed and the orb descended further, landing on the ground in the middle of the park. Again the hatch opened, and the humanoid figure emerged, this time exiting the craft, with what appeared to be a small robot. This was too much for some in the crowd of onlookers. One teenage boy began screaming in fear, but when he did, the humanoid figure turned and looked directly at him, 3 eyes beginning to shine brightly, and the boy fell silent, unable to move, paralyzed in place. This caused others in the crowd to begin to scream, but the humanoid was not finished. Returning into the orb, the humanoid reemerged with what looked like a weapon and pointed it at the boy, causing him to vanish into thin air. This only made the screams louder until finally the humanoid returned into the orb and took off, disappearing into the evening sky. As it did, the boy reappeared, confused but otherwise no worse for wear, while all who had witnessed the event were left overwhelmed with a fear that lasted for days. When the story was reported in the Soviet newspaper TASS the next day, it caused an uproar. This was no ordinary alien encounter, experienced by 1 or 2 people in the middle of the night. No, this had taken place in broad daylight, in front of numerous witnesses. Immediately, military personnel were rushed to the area to interview witnesses, and what they found was the same story, repeated again and again by witness after witness. In short order, teams of scientists descended on the park to try to ascertain what had happened. Days later, a report was issued by one of the teams, proclaiming scientists have confirmed that an unidentified flying object recently landed in a park in the Russian city of Voronezh. They have also identified the landing site and found traces of aliens who made a short promenade about the park. End quote. According to Henryk Zelenov, the head of the Voronezh Geophysical Laboratory, scientists found a 20-yard depression with 4 deep dents where landing gear would presumably have rested. Additionally, the entire area was found to possess elevated levels of the radioactive isotope cesium. Even more incredibly, 2 pieces of unidentifiable rock were also recovered. In Zelenov's words, at first glance they looked like sandstone of a deep red color. However, mineralogical analysis has shown that the substance cannot be found on Earth. Scientists and military personnel could not figure it out. It really did look like an encounter had taken place with something from out of this world. The story was so incredible, it was picked up by media all over the Earth. In the U.S., numerous reports emerged trumpeting a close encounter of the communist kind. The Washington Post published an article titled "Comrades from the Red Star," while the New York Times ran a headline reading, "UFO landing is fact, not fantasy. Russians insist." On NBC Nightly News, Tom Brokaw led the broadcast by proclaiming, "Space aliens are said to have landed in a UFO," while even Time magazine ran a report describing the three-eyed space creature, which zapped a 16-year-old boy with a weapon that made him disappear temporarily. In no time, the encounter in Voronezh became one of the most famous UFO incidents in history, known about and discussed all over the world. And yet, what is perhaps most amazing about the encounter is that it was not the only one of its kind which took place in and around Voronezh at that time. In the weeks and months surrounding the September 27th incident, numerous other similar encounters were reported in the area. Many included similar stories of tall humanoids with tiny heads emerging from glowing orbs, often in one of the city's parks. In fact, a book published in 1990 and appropriately titled UFOs in Voronezh recorded dozens of incidents taking place in the area between August and January of 1989 and 1990. Perhaps the most dramatic of all these incidents took place on the evening of October 2nd at a train station only a few miles from the park where the September 27th encounter took place. On that evening, about 40 people were getting off the train when they noticed a red orb in the sky executing jumps up and down over a nearby field. Eventually, the orb landed, and a tall humanoid figure emerged, carrying some sort of baton. The figure pointed the baton down the ground and into the earth as if it was collecting soil samples, before leisurely returning to its craft and then disappearing into the night sky.